Welcome to Season 2 with the Market Mystics, where we discuss and redefine markets, wealth, and trading on Earth as it is in heaven. Join us on the journey while we consider new possibilities with special guests who might just challenge a few perspectives. Get ready to dive in deep with your hosts, Joshua and Kim.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Market Mystics. We're here on a Monday. We've kind of switched from Mystic Mondays to Mystic Everythings.
That's true. That's true.
Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for today's episode. We have a special guest on with us. And I'm just really looking forward to this conversation. We were talking about it a little bit beforehand, and we don't have like real defined questions and agenda. We just want to have a conversation. So
absolutely. And honestly, I'm really excited about this conversation because every time I have a conversation with our guest, it always is great. Like, it expands my perspective. It makes me ponder things and dig in. And so I hope this does the same for all of our listeners. Do you want to go ahead and introduce?
So welcome everybody, Sean Hamlin, to the podcast today. Sean is a local friend here in Kansas who we have gotten to know through some various associations, and just a really fun person to be around and have conversations with. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. The place is amazing. I mean, I got to say that first of all, this place is awesome. You guys have done an amazing job. Like I really thought it was cool just seeing pictures and stuff, but being in here, it's top shelf. Very cool.
That's so nice. Thanks.
You guys will have them lined up at the door here when the word gets out. Very cool.
That's so fun. Sean is referring to, if you're listening only on audio, we are recording in studio in Wichita again today with Podcast Solutions. So if you want to check them out, we'll link them in the show notes. But that is where we are. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have Sean.
Yes. Sean, first question. Tell me, who are you?
that I didn't think you could ask a question that would just make me stop moving, but man, that's a big question. I'm a lot of things, right? Father, husband, grandfather, meditator, runner, human being, seeker. I mean, I think I'm trying to figure out what I'm not with all those labels. And I don't know the answer to that yet, right? Trying to not necessarily just go to that stuff and identify to those things, and have a more, just unified with everything attitude. But I don't know that I have the language for it yet.
That's
what
okay.
I mean?
Yeah.
So
one of the things you defined yourself as was a seeker. And I'm just curious what it is, when that started. Like, when do you think that was it something you were born with, always searching for something out? Or was it a more recent thing?
You want to know the truth? I saw The Matrix in 1999. And it's like, I didn't grow up going to church thinking about these things. I grew up in crazy town. I mean, my life was bonkers, you know what I mean? And I went and saw The Matrix, and I won't tell all the details of that, but I walked out of that movie with my mind blown, and then suddenly, for some reason, contemplating the existence of a God. And I never had before. I wouldn't have called myself an atheist. I was just like, if you believe in God, that's fine. I don't know if I do. I'm just not sure what I don't know. I didn't give it any thought, and I walked out of that movie with my mind blown. And that kind of got me started into exploring some of these ideas, I guess. That was the first thing that made me think about maybe there is something more to what I'm seeing. And, I think a lot of the ideas and philosophy that was kind of presented in that movie is probably what I really connected to, like this idea that we're walking through life and don't know what the heck is going on, blah, blah, blah. But, so I ended up, a few years later, or several years later, ended up in church, right? Started going to church. And I connected to a lot of that stuff at the time and had a lot of growth and changed a lot of things in my life and met some awesome people and whatnot. But I would say really where I really started getting outside of those confines is where I'd say I was really getting into the seeking thing, right? Into really trying to understand more about this whole thing and how I perceive it and what's going on in my head and all of that. And honestly, I think that was really a couple of years ago when it really broke open. I'd read a book called You're Not So Smart by, I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, that book is really all about how the ways our brains lie to us. I mean, that, we will think things that we think that we're dreaming up just in the moment, but they're from our subconscious mind and all this kind of stuff. And it got me thinking about a lot of things. And I started watching a lot of like TED Talks with neuroscientists and listening to podcasts with neuroscientists and all of that type of stuff. And then that really opened up my thinking, like, okay, what in the world is going on here? Like, I wish I would have thought, neuroscience was cool a million years ago. I might have gone to school for it or something, but now I'm just Google educated. So,
aren't we all?
But that's what really got started a couple of years ago. I really opened it up. I'd say it started, like I said, back in '99, but then it was kind of quiet time there for a while. And then the last couple of years or 3 years, it really opened up big time. And then now I've just gotten to the point where I'm not sure, at least for me right now, if there's something that's more important than understanding this freedom in our mind and getting free of all of these things that keep us bound up.
I love that. Do you want to expound a little bit more on that freedom? What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that entail?
What's been your process in obtaining that?
Yeah.
Well, that was, excuse me, getting into, I think really getting into meditation is what really began to open that thing up for me because, we don't hear, unless you go looking for this stuff, you don't hear it taught places, and it's like, to be honest, it was a lot of going to church and hearing people say these things that sounded good on Sunday, but I was always walking out of there, but going, but how? But how? But how? This, practically speaking, how does this happen? And observing, I'm watching people around me. I'm watching my friends. I'm watching others, and I'm watching people not move. They get excited in this meeting and they go on with their life or whatever, but a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, sometimes many, many years from now, the needle's not moving.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you start realizing that we're stuck in a mindset. The mindset hasn't changed. You know what I mean? And then we keep listening to information through that old mindset, and it just further strengthens those subconscious mindsets and keeps us in that place. Like, you see these memes and these cliches that people act like they're dumb, but you got to change the way you think to change your life. You have to change your thinking to change your finances, to change your health, to change your mental state and all that kind of stuff. And it has to, in my opinion, you have to switch to this inside out perspective where you're owning all of those things, taking authority over things, like you used to hear, they say it in church all the time about taking authority over the devil and all this kind of stuff. And I just think you got to take authority over your thoughts. If you're allowing your emotions, if you're allowing your thoughts and everything to be driven by everything in the world that just jumps up in front of you, that's bondage.
Yeah.
If you can't say something that offends me and me just be like, all right, that's not a good way to be. And it's like, you can always use the example of like church or politics, right? Religion and politics are the two easiest things to just get people to trigger. You know what I mean? I'm trying to become unoffendable. I don't want anything to trigger me. I want to be able to stay neutral and not polarized in any mindset, because honestly, if we're going to be of any good for anyone in any situation, we have to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Otherwise, we'll only want to talk to the people that think just like us,
Right.
which human beings naturally want to do. We like to pick a side. I'm on this side, you're on that side. And, that's great, but that's never going to make any, grand changes in the world until we are able to look at another perspective and at least respect that there is another perspective that is different than yours, that is no more right or wrong than yours. There's 8 billion perspectives on the planet. And like we kind of talked right before we started here. I mean, it's like, what's any one thing that all 8 billion people agree on? I mean, I don't think we came up with one. I'm not sure we'll come up with one today.
Right.
You know what I mean? But then trying to understand, how to, it ultimately means having better relationships with your children, better relationships with your coworkers. And I do think, in the grand scheme of things, we all need each other, to help each other to grow and just practically in life and whatnot. And if you cannot be so offended about things people say or someone's belief about a particular thing or whatnot, then it makes it a lot easier to use a lot more of the world that there is around here to assist with whatever. You know what I mean? And all of that stuff is based out of your subconscious. What did you learn growing up? And if you've never considered it or thought about it, you just don't even know it's a thing. I mean, I have conversations with people and they just look at me like I'm ridiculous. Like, what are you even talking about? But I'm like, stop and think about it. Think about what you're thinking about,
We recently had a conversation with someone about where the origin, where the root of your belief system comes from. And they were talking about how even in the womb, you're developing this genetic code that is based on what your parents are going through at that time. Then you're born into a situation, and sometimes even, people see this a lot with twins, receive different things. They've picked up a different signal from their surroundings and they develop in a totally different way, but almost all of that is learned. And we tend to take the mindset that, no, that's just how I was created. And then we make excuses for the way that we act the rest of our life.
Yeah, if you were raised by different parents, you'd be different.
Mm-hmm.
Your experience in this life would have been different. And I think that's one of the things that and that's kind of an ego thing, I think, where you feel like you have this static, I am this point, this is me right here. But it's like, you're different than you were 3 days ago. You know what I mean? And
I hope you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Should be.
Yeah.
We should be. But that programming, and I think about this, like I've got a granddaughter now who, I love this little human being to pieces, but I love her mom to death too. But I think I did a better job of showing my granddaughter what love really looks like than I did my daughter. Because when I was 23 years old, when she was born, my mindset was very different, man. I thought a lot of things were really important and really needed harped on, and things now that I just honestly think hurt our relationship. And I thought I was doing the right thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, come around another 25 years later, this other little human comes up. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she colors on the wall. She's 2. It's fine. We can fix it. I've said if she burned the house down, I'm like, honey, that's what insurance is for. Don't even sweat it. Meanwhile, her mom, could use one word out of line and I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I think about that talking to my daughter, like, you don't understand the power that you have and how the entire rest of her life is going to go. I've read articles that have stated that they think you've done all, most of what you can do with raising your little human by age 3.
Whew.
And if that's the case, then what really matters more than anything when they're little like that is just to be loved on and to know unequivocally that they are, and they don't even have the language to put to it. They just know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Does mom and dad feel that for them? And if you grow up without that, you will have a very hard time finding that in the world because it's not part of your programming.
Right.
To be honest, that was one of those things that was really hard for me. Like, as I got older and started got married and things like that. Like I came into my marriage with goofy expectations. It is, I mean, the first, I've been married 13 years, almost 14 years, and our marriage is awesome. I love my wife to pieces. I mean, it's great. But I mean, for the first like 5 or 6 years, it was brutally hard because I had to root out all this goofy stuff I thought about what this thing was going to be like. I mean, the examples that I had seen, and it were not great, And again, they were just doing what they knew to do. They didn't know any different, you know what I mean? I can't be mad about it because, it's just like with my daughter, I was doing what I knew was the thing to do. But you're right, it's all based on when we're tiny and we set those paradigms up inside of us at a very, very young age. And if we're never aware of those things, we will look at the entire rest of our life through that lens. And everything we see, hear, and try to do comes through this subconscious place that we're not even aware of.
Mm.
That's why, someone can hear, something be said. This is a real short story. So one day at work, this retired dentist came in, and I have this kind of snaggle tooth up here I've never done anything about. And this dentist is like, why don't you get that bicuspid pulled? And I'm like, because I've talked to the dentist and the orthodontist, and it's just like too daunting to do everything that would need to be done. So whatever, it's been that way forever. It's part of my signature, And half of my coworkers were like enraged, offended, like mad. I can't believe da 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 da. I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you mad right now? First of all, he wasn't talking to you. And if this is about like my feelings and you feeling like you need to jump in and guard my feelings, I don't care. He didn't offend me at all. You know what I mean? But it's like it comes from this place of programming in there that just, gets mad at certain things like that, and people have, until you can get people to understand, it's not about what the guy said. It's like, why are you mad? You're not mad because he said that. You don't even know why you're mad, more than likely, if you haven't given it some thought and have some kind of a grid for it. You will just run through life getting triggered, and that's just no way to live. Once you start getting some peace, you know what I mean? I grew up in crazy town, I like to call it. High stress and a lot of anxiety and depression and drugs and all those things. But it's like once I started getting a sense of that peace and feeling like it's all in my mind, I got to get control in my mind and wire it and hammer that thing down. Then my focus kind of closed up a little bit. It wasn't so broad, if that makes sense.
Do you think that's the key to not being offended, is having a more focused mindset where everything that comes at you just doesn't even have a place to land?
Well, to go back to the beginning of that idea for me was simply with meditation, right? It was weird. Meditation came to me. You know what I mean? It really was like that. It wasn't like I'd read some stuff about it, and even probably a decade ago, I flirted with it for about 5 minutes, but there's just something about it that grabbed my attention, and I just felt drawn to it. No one was telling me to do it, I felt drawn to it. So I started doing that all the time. And then it's probably 90 days in, I was in a conversation. This was in the middle of all the COVID stuff and everything. And everybody's, most people are fairly polarized on their opinions on all of that, masks and vaccines and all those kind of stuff. And I was listening to a person who had a different point of view than I did on it. And I realized I wasn't like agitated by it. And I was like, oh, like in the moment, I consciously recognized that there was no reaction happening in me when there had been previously. Right. And so then I was like, what is that all about? So then I really started looking into like the way we get triggered and what happens in our nervous systems and how we, what that really means to have something stir up in us, right? And get us kind of, moving a certain direction in our thoughts. And that little bit of space right there, for whatever reason, really caught my attention, because in that moment, rather than just simply reacting to something somebody says, I can pause and think about what's going to come out of my mouth, and that's always going to be a better situation. You know what I mean? There are some people in our lives that, you can say one word to them and we know it's going to set them off. You know what I mean? And that is a subconscious thing. So like, it started with developing that little bit of space, right? And then I realized not only did I not feel like jumping up and yelling and saying something rude or anything like that, but like my body was calm. Like my whole system didn't move. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I feel like that's one of the first things with people who, if they start doing meditation and things like that, that's one of the first things that they will find is that space in an area that they used to get triggered by something. And it doesn't mean it's like that happens and it never happens again. You're trigger free and all that. Well, no, it doesn't. But that was a real starting point for me to really even just dig further into meditation in general.
What does your practice with meditation look like?
It's really been mostly the same since I started. So when now you're talking about like specifically what exactly do I do?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, specifically what you do, or like how often do you meditate? How long do you meditate? I mean, I know there's a lot of different styles of meditating, so you don't have to give, personal details, but.
When I started doing it like 20 minutes a day. And basically it was kind of, and there's probably different names for it. It was a Kirby, Delano description of how to meditate. And it was basically just observe your thoughts, right? Close your eyes, kind of focus on your breath to give yourself just kind of a thing to get started on. And then, in this stream of consciousness that comes rolling through, thoughts are coming. That's the big misunderstanding for so many people. It's like, my brain was busy. Your brain's been busy your whole entire life. You just never paid attention. You know what I mean? It's like a chihuahua on crack running all the time. You just never, ever stop to pay attention to it, right? So just sitting back and then learning to just not engage the thoughts, try to not think, right? You can be sitting there with your eyes closed, and I can hear my dog bark in the other room, and I can just go have a thought, oh, the dog barked, and I can let it go. Or I can go, what's the dog barking at? Do I need to go check on him? Oh man, I forgot I'm out of dog food. And you will be down the races because that's the way our brains work. And you've never tried to disentangle from those thoughts, right? So it's mostly been just that practice of getting to disentangle from my thoughts. So for the first several months, and it was just like 20 minutes a day. And then at some point I flipped up to an hour. That's kind of my personality, like, let's go long on everything, right? There's got to be a more extreme version. I want to try that one. So, but I got into an hour and, sometimes hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours for a year straight, like religiously, never missing a day or anything like that. And then at some point, my wife wanted to start doing it finally after a couple of years, so I backed my time down and started doing it with her and whatnot. But I don't know that it's terribly important to do that. But I'll say this, if you start meditating 20 minutes a day, and you're, 40 years old, you cannot expect to undo 40 years worth of stuff in a month, in a couple months, in a few months, because your brain has developed, not just what you think, but physically. They show that this meditation can change the shape and structure of your brain in certain places and things like that. But the making that little tiny practice, even 20 minutes a day, if you will do it, has the power to transform your life if you'll just do it consistently. Make it a habit. That's the thing. Like, when you do it long enough to create the habit, then it's no problem. The hardest part is the first 90 days. You know what I mean? Because we all are instant gratification life. Everything that we do, we can get every piece of information we could possibly want in a moment at our fingertips. We want things to go super duper fast. If I'm in the drive-thru at Starbucks for more than 14 seconds, I'm like, what is going on here? Like, is anybody even working today? You know what I mean? So slowing down and just doing that, like I said, has a lot of power to change your life. I think part of the hard part is we read a lot of stuff about mindfulness and all of this kind of stuff. And the thing is, even everybody, I'm just rambling here, sorry.
No, it's great.
Everybody has a picture in the mind of what meditation is, right? But there's a bunch of facets of this whole thing that I think people, don't understand. And I've said it from the beginning when I started trying to help people get started doing this. The beauty is in the simplicity. You really don't have to do anything but learn to disentangle from the thoughts. Because, there's a lot of things that happen when you start to meditate. Physiologically, you go into a parasympathetic state, your nervous system settles way down, you're all nice and relaxed, all your feel-good chemicals come in, there's that thing, right? We spend so much of our time going to work and doing all these things, and we're amped up and we're excited. I mean, how often do we really get into that state, naturally? It's pretty hard to do. So you start doing that, that has physical health benefits. I mean, you can lower your blood sugar and do all of these things, and not blood sugar, blood pressure and stuff like that, But as you start doing that stuff on a daily basis, then you also are able to start accessing that place when you are not meditating, right? You start to be able to get into that place easier other times. And the more time that we can spend in that place, the better it is just for our physical health. Pull all of the growing, in your consciousness and spirituality side out of it. Just physically, it can have huge impacts on your health. You know what I mean? And then when you get into, learning to disengage from your thoughts as they come flying in and everything, as you're practicing that in meditation, then it starts happening when you're not meditating, when you're just talking to your spouse and you guys are having a spirited discussion about a thing. And you're able to, the thought comes up like, man, I want to choke this person right now. And you can just let it go. Like, I'm not going to grab that one. We're going to let that thing go. I'm going to stay cool right in this moment. You know what I mean? And then, one of the things that I think is the most amazing is it starts to unravel and undo this programming that we have on a level that is beyond our consciousness. I mean, it's subconscious. We don't know what the heck is down there. So it's like, what would happen with you and what would happen with you and happen with me is all going to be different because there was very different routes of us to get here. And I think the thing that's really, truly insane about it, and I think is deeply spiritual, is deeply God, is the fact that based on your experience and your history and all that stuff, the things in you that need to go, they go in the order that they need to go for you. So you'll hear people talk who are big or experienced meditators or have been doing it for a while, and they say these things like, I don't connect with any of that. It's okay, though. There's no right or wrong answer. I mean, what will change is what needs to change for you very specifically. And I think people just underestimate how something so simple can have such a profound effect on your health, your mental state, all these things.
This is really interesting. I have a question that's going to seem really off the wall, but I can't help but think it, so now I'm going to ask it. So this is really adjusting your subconscious. Have you found that since you've started making it a practice to be meditating and get into this place of freedom and peace, have you seen your dream life change? I know it's a strange question, but I think there's the consciousness, there's the subconsciousness, and there's the unconsciousness. How much is that related, I wonder?
That is, you know what? I have very few dreams that I ever remember. Very few. So I really honestly can't answer it. I don't feel like I have enough data to give a good response. Like, my wife goes to sleep at night. She lives a whole nother life. I mean, she closes her eyes and goes to bed, and it is literally like she wakes up in another world and remembers every detail of it every single night. I close my eyes, it's darkness, I open them, and I'm back. You know what I'm saying? Like, my dream recall is so low, but I'm sure it could. You know what I mean? I just honestly don't have any experience with it. Maybe I need to get better at dreaming or remembering my dreams or something. But I get where you're coming from. A big part of the whole subconscious thing is like, this is one of the things I find so fascinating. We all have we have definitions for everything. We have dictionaries that tell us what things mean. But the truth of the matter is, we all define these things differently. You know, if I say the word meditation, everybody has a different picture in their head about that one, what that even looks like.
Yeah.
You know, if you say, I mean, anything, I mean, if you say keto diet, if you say, you know, revival is a popular word right now, you know, everybody has a different picture in their mind about that, what that stuff means and what it looks like. The thing that's kind of crazy is when you start not knowing, you start realizing, like, I don't know what I think about that anymore. Like, I don't know how to define that anymore, you know, and it can be a little unsettling because these are like the pillars in which you've, you know, built up inside of you that you've directed and lived your life on. And when those things start to change, like, you know, like this means this. My whole life, it's been this, but now all of a sudden, I don't know what that is anymore. Like, what the heck is that? And it can change the way you look at absolutely everything. And I mean, that's not something people always talk about, but I've seen it with groups of people that start meditating at the same time. People will oftentimes or usually come to this point where they're like, I don't know what the heck is going on with anything. And that's just evidence that those subconscious paradigms that have been in your life forever and ever are starting to fall away. And you'll find you don't connect, you know, you may not connect to things in the same way that you used to. I think the thing that's also awesome on that is just you're able to receive new information differently. The stuff that you've always heard a certain way, even if you hear it the same way again, you'll hear it differently because now something internally on a subconscious level has shifted. And I think if we're trying to grow in any fashion, I mean, it can be anything. I mean, it can be, you know, exercise, diet, you know, physically, you know, spiritually, all these things, you know, being able to undo that stuff that we've learned for decades and decades in our life is the key to really make some space for this new programming to get in. But then at the same time, then try to stay open, right? Like at this point, you know, I do feel like I'm still kind of unraveling my definitions and things, but I'm also trying to just recognize the minute I start trying to clamp down on something and not necessarily clamp down on it. I mean, we talked about this briefly before we started, you know, it's like, I feel like, is there part of me that's just trying too hard to not clamp down on anything? And I'm just going to float out here in the ether like everything is everything and nothing is nothing. And I don't know. I'm just going to stay here. So sorry, longest answer ever about the dream thing. I should have said no. Sorry.
No, I think that's great. I can tell you in my life, I dream similarly to your wife. If I fall asleep, I will dream.
Yeah.
And meditating for me, what it has done, what I have noticed up to this point is I have gotten a lot better at figuring out, oh, this dream is processing what's been going on in my life. And I can see through this imagery how, oh, this ties to what happened yesterday. This tied to what I'm thinking about tomorrow. The more that I meditate, and I would say one of the key facets of meditating is being present in right here, right now, and not taking energy from yesterday, not taking energy from tomorrow, but just being present. And I would say the more that I've done that, the more I notice my dream life being a bit more dreamlike rather than processy. That's one thing that I've noticed, because I'm not pulling this fear and anxiety or just thoughts from tomorrow into today and being like, oh, okay, that's what I got to do. And I'm not holding on to what happened to me yesterday as much. I mean, it still happens, you know, I'm not there, but like, you know, it's a process, but that's one of the big things that I've noticed.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, that is that. And that makes sense. You know what I mean? If you're not so stuck on these other things that on a subconscious level, you'd have a little more freedom to be.
Yeah. To just, I think that's something that's really fascinating. I heard someone talking yesterday about a person, and they were talking about, in a way, meditating, and how it started for them was daydreaming and being like, oh, what could happen if this happened? And not in a fear and anxiety way, But, like we were talking about some of our belief systems, especially around the religious systems we've been a part of that is like, if you can't ask the question, well, what if it wasn't like that? What if this was it? What if that was it? I think that exploring, that seeking is ultimately what really helps root any sort of truth that you're going to find into you. But if you never ask the question, I don't think you're ever going to find anything.
Curiosity, if you're not curious, your mind's made up.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what anybody's going to say to you. You know what I mean? Can you, the curiosity thing. And I think it comes back to like being polarized in your mindset. You know what I mean? Donald Trump is going to change the world when he gets elected. You know what I'm saying? Like that mindset, like people are like, just so locked into it or whatever, but you're like, but really? But why? And they just get mad, you know what I mean? Because their mind's made up. Doesn't matter what you say.
Right.
You can come with perfect information that is well educated and whatever, but because they've made a decision on something on some level, then everything, they throw it all out. Throw out the baby with the bathwater. Can't be anything good in there. And that curiosity, I think, is so important if we're going to keep growing, because you don't know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
I mean, even we have this concept about what we're going looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Do we even really know what it is? I mean, we've got a concept based on our history and based on our kind of programming and stuff of what it is that we're looking for. But maybe when your parameters start to get kind of smashed and your definitions start to change, maybe they're like, the heck is it? What is it? What am I looking for? What is it called? What is that thing? And it's like, and I know a lot of us, who have been open to some different ideas and had some different discussions, get in these places where like, I don't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not supposed to. Do I have to? Is it just my ego that wants to know everything? I mean, I go through these battles with my ego. Like, I feel like I've gotten pretty good about not being ego driven. And then, I'll go through these times when I feel like I literally am driven by my ego in every single thing that I do. I'm an ego monster. My ego's like a 300-pound power lifter who's just way stronger than me, and I can't rein him in. You know what I mean? I mean, it's goofiness, but it's like, the mindset ultimately has shifted inside out. You know what I'm saying? I don't blame anybody for anything that I experience, anything that I feel or whatever. I'm like, what is that thing in me that needs to heal, that needs to change? I read something the other day, made me think about this. I mean, in a grand way of kind of saying it, a lot of it is forgiveness, right? A lot of it's forgiveness. Even when you use that word, we all have a different definition of what that thing is.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like, if on a deep level, we can heal from our hurts and our wounds and our traumas and our things like that. It's, I tend to call that just kind of forgiveness. You know what I mean? When you get released of those things, free those things, not even necessarily people and individual people per se, but, situations, perspective, situations and, some hurts and traumas and things like that. But, when we get free of those things, it opens up our mind. I mean, it opens up our body.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had this, side note thought. I had this, my heel's been bothering me for a while. And it was before Wow Union. I was in this little Strava group to run this 5K competition. And everybody knew I was a runner. So I had automatically put some pressure on myself. Like, I got to perform on this thing. Even though there are people much younger than me, I should not think I'm going to outrun people half my age. But that's not my personality. So I'm like, okay, so I started doing a lot of running hard. Well, then I get hurt. And just the other day, I was like, I wonder if somewhere subconsciously, I was worried that I was not going to be able to do as well as I had hoped I would.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wasn't going to fare well. I was going to look bad. I was going to blah, 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 blah. And my subconscious mind, like, here, I'll take care of that for you. And I was
Interesting.
like, I mean, it could be total hogwash.
Which heel was it?
What's that?
Which heel was it?
My left.
Okay.
And it's, while we were at Union, I had a stress fracture in my right foot, so that was bad enough, but the left thing came first.
Wow.
And I started thinking, like, what if that is like a deep seated, like protective mechanism or something, because I just feel like I'm not good enough still. I'm not good enough at this thing. I'm not whatever. And my body's like, here, or my mind said, here, I'll take care of this for you. I don't know. Side thought. Like I had that thought the other day. I was like, that's pretty profound if that kind of stuff can happen.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think to some degree it makes sense. My doctor, I was having a conversation with him about feet or legs in general. And he was like, okay, legs and feet generally represent movement for us. Your left side tends to represent your past. Your right side tends to represent your future. So people who have issues on their left side, what he has found is more often than not, there is an emotional component around a belief system of who they are based on where they've been. And if
Wow.
they have an issue that is predominantly on the right side, more often than not, there's an emotional, mental thought process aspect of it that is worried about where they're going and who they are.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, because that's really kind of in line with what I started
I know.
thinking, you know,
That's-
and it's my left side, you
That's
know.
what that's why I was asking what side it was, because I think that that's, you know, you were processing, oh, did my subconscious like allow or create or cause, you know, whatever, this injury to prevent me from obtaining the result I already thought I was going to get.
Yeah.
You know, that's in some regard,
Right.
that's a belief system about who you are based on where you've been. And I just like, like that's, the body is such an incredible technology that I think we have no idea really. We're just like grasping, just shaving off the top of what the potential is with it.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, we're just now getting to the point scientifically where you can test a lot of these things that people have simply been saying for thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
And we're just now able to start putting testing to it and stuff. And I mean, that's wild to think about. So this is why I've gotten so fascinated with this whole thing, like the mind, you know, and neuroscience and the nervous system and the way it all ties together and how it all works. And because it's like, at least this point, you know, I could change my perspective here tomorrow, but I feel like what is more important for everyone to, you know, gain freedom in their mind and from their triggers and have more peace, have more joy. Like, you know, if you want to, you know, go scriptural on it, I mean, it's like walking in more of the fruit of the spirit. If you're going to label those things, I mean, who wouldn't want those things? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, I've heard a lot of very well-meaning people tell people that are depressed and anxious or whatever and things like that, you know, you need to read the Bible and pray more. Well, I mean, if that were the answer, the world would look very different. There's a lot of people that have that advice and they have no freedom. You know, they mean well. They're going through the paradigm that they understand, you know, but ultimately just human being to human being, pull all the theological stuff out. Like, do we want to help people get free of that stuff? And maybe it looks totally different than what we thought it did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, if you were going to leave our listeners with one piece of advice, one thing that they should implement in their life, what would it be, and what is a practical way they can start that?
To meditate. You know, I was a guy who was stuck for a long, long time. So not moving the needle, so to speak, right? You know, life was moving along, but personally, I just felt like I wasn't gaining any freedom in my mind. And then when I started doing that, that is the thing that changed things for me. It's like, and we all know how it is. Like, you see in others what you see in yourself, you know. So of course I'm honed in on all the people that I feel like aren't moving their needles because I'm in the same spot, you know what I mean? But I feel like if you feel like you've tried the stuff, you've read the books, you did the courses, you watched the videos, you know, and you still feel like something's not moving, you got to change the attack to get the movement to come and start going at it from a different direction. And I think the thing that I think is so beautiful about meditation is that allows you to start breaking down these things internally that are keeping you from getting ahead. I mean, you want to get ahead, you want to change things. I mean, we're just in, you know, into a new year. I mean, how many New Year's resolutions do you think were made in the United States of America that are still going strong 2 months in? I mean, I don't know have the math on this, but I'm going to go on a limb and guess 95% of them have failed already. You know what I mean? And it's not that people don't want to, it's not that they're not motivated or whatever. I think we're going about it wrong. And I feel like, to sum it up, meditate. I feel like, a simple get up in the morning before you've had a chance to go on. And I tell people that want to change their workout programs and all this stuff too, if you've never done that, like morning time is the best time to do it, because I get home from work, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to now go to the gym. Like, I know people that do, and that takes motivation. I can't do it. You know what I mean? But it's like, get up in the morning before you've had a chance to worry about your day, do all of your stuff, have your cup of coffee, your tea, do whatever you do, and just go give yourself 20 minutes. Start with 10, start with 5. It doesn't matter. It's going to feel tough in the beginning because you've never done it. And you may sit there with your eyes closed for 5 minutes and just feel like all you did was think with your eyes closed, and it's okay. You know what I mean? But just develop the practice, the habit of doing it on a daily basis. And I just, with everything in me, believe it's one of the most powerful things you can do. Just simply get the needle moving in anything, in any of it. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is that you're trying to get some change and some growth in. I feel like it's the easiest thing in the world to start going, because it's not, we're all information inhalers. Like, we read, we watch, we all love the stuff, but I think more and more, we have to unlearn the filters that are bringing in the new information, because even when we get new information, we all three hear it differently because our filters are totally different, so quite simply develop that practice of meditation and start small. Start 5 minutes a day. Just do it every single day and be patient, because worst case scenario, you're going to build up to doing 20 minutes a day, and you're going to just sit there for 20 minutes and have a time that you are not stressed out going after 1,000 different things, thinking about the rest of the year, the rest of the day, the kids, all this kind of stuff. And you just have 20 minutes of peace. I mean, if that was all you did, it would be good for you.
Worth it.
Right?
Awesome. Sean, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. As always, I just always really get a lot out of our conversation. So I'm glad that we could expand this and let other people experience this as well.
Well, I apologize if I just talk too much. I've got the habit of that when I get going.
That's great. Nope, that's exactly what we wanted you here. So thank you for sharing your experience and your wealth and your experience of life with us. So
Thanks
valuable.
for having me. Yeah, it's totally awesome, man. I was thrilled to be here. It was fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll see you guys on Thursday.
See ya. Thank you for sticking around. Listen for new episodes every Monday and Thursday. Find us on all social media platforms by searching for Market Mystics. Don't forget to follow and subscribe. Visit upperroomcd.com, where you can find more information about the hosts, projects, and guests. Go deeper by booking a coaching appointment focused on redefining identity and wealth in your life. See you next time.